We'll start off with the first basic overview of the sound producing system. So here we have the key organs and regions for creating speech sounds. The source of all this speech sounds is down here in the lungs, because in order to have sound projected out into the world, we need air that's moving through the system, and the source of that air is down here in the lungs. So we contract our intercostal muscles and force air up the trachea or the windpipe. And then it passes through the larynx. And the larynx is where we have our vocal cords in there, which is important because that is where we create the noise for speech sounds. So we get our vocal cords vibrating, and that creates noise. The glottis is actually the hole between the vocal ligaments. So between the two sets of vocal cords, we have a hole for the air to pass through, which is called the glottis. And the size of the glottis will influence whether or not we have voiced or voiceless sounds. Once we have just basic speech sound created, now we have to shape that speech sound. And then the air passes through these three regions we call the filters. First of all, we have the throat region, the first filter, which is called the pharynx. Now, in English, we don't have any pharyngeal sounds where we modify the shape of the pharynx, but some languages will have something going on here with the root of the tongue pulled back. Or the glottis or the larynx shifted to change the shape of the pharynx, but not in English. We don't have any pharyngeal sounds. The second filter we have is the nasal tract, and we don't change the shape of the nasal tract. We just engage whether or not sounds pass through the nasal tract. That's kind of the key thing with the second filter of the nasal tract for those nasal sounds that we have a few of in English. Most of the action in terms of shaping the type of speech sound we have will occur in the oral tract, which is basically the mouth region. So by manipulating the lips and the position of the tongue in relation to the teeth and the roof of the mouth and so on, we can totally change the shape of this resonating chamber and influence the quality of the sound of the speech sounds that we produce. So let's shift back, or down on yours, I think, to the diagram of the larynx. So here we have a picture taken from above of the larynx. So the Adam's apple that sticks out in your throat is officially called the larynx. So here's a diagram that this poor person's head's chopped right off, and we're looking down at the larynx. So there's lots of different anatomical features in the larynx that the textbook goes over, but here are the three key ones that we need to know about. So the glottis, as I mentioned before, is the hole between the two sheets of vocal cords or vocal folds. There's two names for the things that vibrate. Sometimes they're called vocal folds, sometimes they're called vocal cords. So we've got these two sheets of muscles, and then between them we have a hole, which is called the glottis. The vocal folds or cords are attached to these vocal ligaments that are stretched down, up and down, or back and back to front, I guess, here, attached to these arytenoid cartilage pieces, which are attached to muscles which control the size of the glottis. So the vocal ligaments are pulled together or apart to change the size of the glottis, which will influence what kind of sound we have. So the next diagram shows you how the state of the glottis or glottal state will influence the type of sound we have. So the first one here is a voiceless sound. So this is more like what's going on in your larynx when you're just sitting and breathing, where you don't want to make a lot of noise when you breathe, and so the glottis is wide open. The two vocal ligaments are pulled wide apart, or fairly wide apart here, and the glottis is wide open. Now, when we're speaking, what we do is we engage the vocal cords here. These are muscles that we have control over them. We control whether or not we contract these muscles. So when we're creating a voiceless sound, we don't want the vocal cords to vibrate. So how do we eliminate vibration? We open up the glottis and we tighten the vocal cords so that they don't vibrate. Now, most of the time when we're speaking, our vocal cords are vibrating because we have vibrating sounds for all of our vowels. We have vibrating sounds for all of our sonorant consonants, and for almost half of our obstruent consonants, they're all voiced. So this is the typical state of voicing for speech in whatever language. Most sounds are voiced sounds. So how do we create a voice sound? Well, we draw the two vocal ligaments close together, have a very narrow opening between the vocal cords, force air through that narrow opening. We keep our vocal cords nice and loose here so that they vibrate, and the pressure of the air passing by through this narrow opening will create vibration. So these are the two key glottal states or states of the glottis that you need to know about. Voiceless sounds with a wide open glottis and tight vocal cords, voice sound with a narrow glottis and loose vocal cords. Now these other two we don't need to worry about too much. Some languages have murmurs, which is a third glottal state, which is kind of like a deep breathy voice where you keep the vocal cords loose a lot, but we don't need to really worry about that one. Whisper is kind of an interesting one because here what we do is we eliminate vibration because we don't want, when you're whispering, you don't want your voice to travel very far. So how do we eliminate or prevent the voice traveling very far is we eliminate the voicing. And so all of the sound waves are created by forcing the air through this narrow opening that has hard structures on all sides, and we just get this very airy whisper kind of voice with no vibration. But I wouldn't worry too much about whisper. Okay, so let's move on now to the vocal tract, or the oral tract in particular. That's where most of the action is in terms of shaping the sound. So, we have the source of moving air, the lungs down here. The air passes up the trachea through the glottis, engaging the vocal cords, and then passing up through the pharynx. And then when the air passes into the mouth region, we can now change the shape of the mouth in different ways. We have two different kinds of articulators. We have movable articulators, which are the muscles, like the lips. The lips are movable articulators, and the tongue is a movable articulator. So we have the tip of the tongue here. Now, if you put your two lips together, you can change the shape of this resonating chamber. And in linguistics, we don't call these kinds of sounds lip sounds. Instead, we use the Latin terminology and we call them labial sounds. So labial sounds are any sounds that we articulate involving our lips. Sometimes we just put two lips together, in which case we call those guys bilabial, with bi meaning two. Sometimes we have labiodental sounds where the bottom lip and the top teeth kind of work together. So that's the first of the movable articulators, or the lips. The second movable articulator is the tongue, and then the tongue gets involved with the teeth or with the roof of the mouth. So sometimes we stick the tongue between the teeth. Now, teeth sounds, again, we don't call them teeth sounds. We use the Latin dental sounds. So if you put your tongue out in between your teeth, we call those kinds of sounds interdental sounds. If you put your tongue up in behind your teeth, if you feel with your tongue right now, if you feel behind your teeth, there's this little ridge right behind your teeth that your teeth are kind of rooted into, and then it shoots up to the top of your mouth. So this little ridge is called the alveolar ridge. And we articulate a lot of sounds in languages around the world by putting the tip of the tongue up to the alveolar ridge. That kind of motion is very small and easy to do. So languages like to involve alveolar sounds because they're so easy to create. The tip of the tongue just moves up to the alveolar ridge. So any sounds created with our tongue moving up to the alveolar ridge we call alveolars. Now the roof of your mouth here, the hard palate, where it's nice and hard up in the top of your mouth, any sounds where our tongue moves up to the hard palate are labeled palatal sounds. Now we don't really have palatals. Maybe the y is kind of a palatal, but on our charts we're just going to call it alveopalatal. So what the heck are alveopalatals? Well, they're sounds created in behind the alveolar ridge, kind of where the alveolar ridge meets up with the hard palate. So those are the alveopalatals. Now we also have a bunch of sounds in English called velar sounds. And the velar sounds is where the base of the tongue moves back up towards the velum. And the velum is this soft muscle structure right at the very back of your mouth, the thing that kind of hangs down. Well, actually the very bottom tip of the velum is called the uvula. Now, English, again, has no uvular sounds. Some languages have sounds where the bottom tip is kind of engaged. I think the continental French R sound involves the uvula moving around. But in Canadian English, anyway, we just have velar sounds. The velum is also sometimes called the soft palate because it turns into, from the hard roof of your mouth, now it turns into a soft muscle structure. The velum is really important for two reasons. First of all, it functions as the place of articulation for certain consonants. A sound like a k or a g or an ng sound in English, the base of our tongue moves back to the velum. It's also very important because occasionally actually, the way the diagram here is shown is someone who's not speaking at all. This would be a person just breathing, because typically when we sit and watch TV or listen to a lecture and we're just breathing, the air will come up the trachea and pass through our nose. Most of the time we have our mouth shut and then we breathe in and out our nose. And so here the velum is in its relaxed position where it's just hanging down. When we're speaking, however, we don't want a lot of air escaping out our nose when we're speaking. So what we do is we engage the velum. We contract that muscle and it moves up and blocks off access to the nasal cavity so that the air will just shoot up past there and out your mouth when we're speaking. Unless we are creating a or an n or an ng sound. If we're doing one of those nasals, then the velum has to drop down quickly to allow air out our nose and then back up again. So the velum's kind of busy, moving up and down all the time. Down for nasals and up for all the other sounds, all the other what we call oral sounds. Okay, so I think that covers most of the aspects of the head. One last little organ here is the epiglottis. You might have heard about the epiglottis. And this is a little a muscle that when you swallow, the last thing you want is for food to shoot into your throat or down, get trapped in the glottis and the larynx, and you choke on something or get water down into your lungs. No, you don't want that. So what we do is when we swallow, this little muscle here flops down and covers over the entrance into the larynx and the trachea so that the food that you're eating and the liquid you're drinking will just shoot straight on down the esophagus, into the stomach. Okay, so that covers the different aspects of the sound producing system. And now hopefully you'll make sense of the charts and we can start filling in the consonants right away.